17.3 million people voted in that referendum peacefully and democratically to leave the European Union, which is a lot more people than voted for Labour in the last general election. So if he's not prepared to respect the opinion of 1 million people who've signed this petition, and he's all about numbers today, would you respect the opinion of 17.3 million people who voted to leave the EU, or is that not a big enough number for him either?
Say, well, the people want change. They are not the majority of the people in this country. There are tens and tens of millions of people in this country. Those people voted in good faith, and they were lied to by people like him.
I beg your pardon?
Inadvertently lied.
In this clip, you'll see how quickly the argument unravels and why this moment says far more about Labour's attitude to voters than they probably intended. If you care about free speech, democratic accountability, and what's really being said in Westminster, hit like, subscribe, and stay with us, because this is being quietly ignored by the mainstream media.
Hurley first.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. This petition presents itself as the voice of democratic urgency. In truth, it's something we're far more familiar with, and something that is far less noble. It's the impulse of the toddler. But a democracy cannot be run like a nursery, because here's the truth: you don't get something simply because you want it. Yeah.
Is he seriously saying, because his attitude, I have to say, is unbelievably patronising, is he seriously saying that the over 1 million people across the UK who signed this petition are basically all children who don't know what they're doing? Because that's his implication, which is deeply insulting to 1 million plus people, including our constituents.
You've got 1 million people sign a petition. How many people vote in a general election? Well more than 1 million people. They might not like it, but it's true. They do not include a rolling plebiscite triggered whenever a sufficiently large group of people become bored, frustrated, impatient, or whether they've had a video clip shared to them on the WhatsApp. Yeah?
I feel the honourable member might acknowledge that in the history of petitions debates, that the two most highly subscribed to debates have been asking for a general election in this Parliament. Would he acknowledge the fact that even the fact that both of those petitions had over £1 million, people signing the petition, illustrates the huge frustration out there at this current government that they do want the government to change course?
The petitioners who have put their names to this petition, they say, well, the people want change. They are not the majority of the people in this country. There are tens and tens of millions of people in this country, and 1 million signed this petition. And here's the news: the people actually got change in 2024. 18 months ago, we got a government that explicitly said it wasn't just going to go and put sticking plasters on the gaping wounds of the previous 14 years. The self-harming referendum, which has done this country no favours whatsoever. In every part... Go on. If he must.
He may recall that 17.3 million people voted in that referendum peacefully and democratically to leave the European Union, which is a lot more people than voted for Labour in the last general election. So if he's not prepared to respect the opinion of 1 million people who've signed this petition, and he's all about numbers today, would you respect the opinion of 17.3 million people who voted to leave the EU, or is that not a big enough number for him either?
A Labour MP stood up in the House of Commons and told over 1 million British citizens that their democratic instinct was, and I'm quoting directly, the impulse of the toddler. That was the moment. Everything unravelled. Because in one careless phrase, he didn't just lose an argument. He exposed something much bigger about how this government sees the people it's supposed to serve. To understand why this hit so hard, you need two numbers. 17.3 million, the people who voted to leave the European Union in 2016. The largest democratic mandate for any single proposition in British history. And 1 million the people who signed a petition calling for a general election, which reached Parliament and triggered a formal debate. Now, constitutionally, petitions don't force elections. Even at 1 million signatures, they're advisory. That's not a Labour rule. That's just how British representative democracy works. But here's the thing. Constitutional facts don't exist in a vacuum. They exist inside a political climate. And right now, that climate is one of deep, restless public frustration. 18 months into a Labour government that promised transformation, a significant chunk of the country feels like the change they were promised simply hasn't arrived. That was the tinderbox. The toddler comment was the match. The Labour MP's argument, stripped back, was reasonable enough. Democracy can't run on emotional impulse. Governments serve fixed terms. A petition isn't a referendum. Technically, he's correct. But the moment he described 1 million people's democratic participation as childish impatience, the chamber turned on him. Opposition MPs were immediately on their feet. One called it unbelievably patronising. Another reminded him that those million signatories are their constituents, real people in real places who felt strongly enough to act. Then came the question that blew the roof off. An opposition MP stood up and asked, if 1 million signatures don't deserve respect, what about 17.3 million? Because that's how many voted to leave the EU more, he pointed out, than voted for Labour in the last general election. The Labour MP's response was that Leave voters were lied to. He corrected himself almost instantly, adding the word inadvertently. But it was too late. The moment had already landed and it was already spreading. Here's why this matters beyond the theatre of Westminster. Language from politicians is signal. When a government MP frames citizen petitions as the behaviour of impatient children, he isn't just making a procedural point, he's broadcasting how power views the public. And that broadcast travels far beyond the chamber. British trust in political institutions has been eroding for years through austerity, through the chaos of Brexit, through promises made and quietly abandoned. When over 1 million people use the official democratic tool their own government provides, and the response from that government sounds even faintly like, sit down and wait, you don't defend democracy. You confirm every cynical suspicion people already have about it. Being constitutionally correct and being politically wise are two completely different things. And in the age of the viral clip, confusing them is a serious miscalculation. Because that clip was everywhere within hours. The toddler line, stripped of context, shared across WhatsApp groups and social media feeds, landing in exactly the communities where Labour can least afford to lose ground. The opposition's Brexit comparison was a precision strike. It connected Labour's dismissal of the petition to a much older wound, the feeling held by millions of Leave voters that their 2016 decision was never truly accepted by the political establishment. Two separate frustrations collapsed into one devastating question. And the answer Labour gave made it worse. The real story here isn't about petitions or procedure. It's about the oldest problem in democratic politics. A government's mandate isn't a permanent possession handed over on election night. It has to be renewed not just at the ballot box, but in every exchange between power and the people it represents. You can win every constitutional argument and still lose the public completely. The moment voters feel looked down on, talked past, or dismissed as too simple to understand how democracy works, that's when trust doesn't just dip, it breaks. And in a media environment where one sentence in a Commons debate can reach millions by morning, the cost of that kind of contempt, even unintended contempt, is higher than it has ever been. Power that forgets to respect the people it serves doesn't stay power for long. That's not a warning for Labour specifically, that's just history.